And we're live again. Hello, everybody.
Yay.
We're back.
Hey!
So at the
Sorry.
end, half the characters turn into dust, including Spider-Man. I'd say Spider-Man is the saddest of those. They really...
Yeah, but it's almost played up a little bit too much, I thought.
But he is a kid.
Yeah, he is a kid, but at the same time, like, we've seen him be heroic before and, like, overcome that stuff. Like, the threat of death and whatnot.
Overcome being erased from existence.
But, like, you know, what seems like a dire situation, because at that point he doesn't know he's done, you know? He doesn't...
That's true, and also, like, I don't think other people are dissolving yet at that planet. Maybe?
Right.
I don't remember. Groot was pretty rough, too.
Yeah, Groot was rough.
But, yeah. Lots of people dissolve.
So,
we're back on our Infinity War spoiler stream, by the way.
Yep, we're back.
Hello, how you doing? Well, let's start that again.
Hey, most everyone got back too. Welcome.
So, that's the summary of the movie.
Yeah, and so, yeah, like you said, we got. I thought I was surprised. I was actually legitimately surprised about who all dissolved. Like especially Black Panther. That one surprised me because I mean, but the thing is, what it also did is that the ones they chose to dissolve really nailed home the fact to me that this is all going to be reversed. Like,
yes. Well, I mean, they were safe. They were safe to get rid of anybody who doesn't have a movie between now and 4.
Right.
You know, and that's...
And to be fair, the only ones who do have a movie coming out are Ant-Man and Captain Marvel.
Right.
Those
So
are
they were in a very unique position to be able to just get rid of anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we know they're all coming back.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. I mean,
Yeah.
we know there's going to be a Guardians 3. We know there's going to be a Black Panther 2.
Mm-hmm.
All these characters are coming. We know that the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not going to take place in a world with only half the population, you know?
Right.
Although it would be funny if that's what Ant-Man and the Wasp was like. What really did occur to me is, when is this Venom movie that they're really trying to make you think is...
don't get in on this.
Wouldn't it be great if all of a sudden Sony had to reshoot all of Venom to make it look like all the scenes have half the people in? Where did everybody go? Nah, because they'll just... Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll accept the invite. They'll just set it before Infinity War. We know what they'll do.
Right.
Okay. I would say there are 2 possibilities for how they're going to reverse this. Right?
Well, hold on. I do want to say about the last thing we see in the movie proper. Because this is going to continue.
Sequence?
No. Because I think this is going to continue my love affair with Thanos.
He does actually retire?
He sticks to his word. Yeah, he straight up sticks to his word. Like, he doesn't, exact power of the galaxy. There's no super dramatic, moment where he's,
Yes.
You see legions of his, henchmen marching through the streets of Naboo.
He also doesn't do anything like make sure terrible deaths await the Avengers who personally inconvenienced him the most.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't break, he doesn't gloat, he doesn't plot revenge, he doesn't do anything like that. He like, it looks like he goes to fucking Montana and sits out on a porch of a cabin,
Right.
Which, all the power to him.
Yeah.
Let's see, where do I have to... Where do I have to go? There we go. I have to go here.
Okay.
So this is a hostage rescue mission?
Yeah, you just gotta find a guy and get him out. Same as rescuing Davo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, I would say, broadly speaking, we've got two basic options for how this plays out in the next movie, right?
Real quick, hello, Natalie's World, Reactions, Gaming, and more. How's it going? Just, in case you didn't catch in the title, we are spoiling Infinity War, and we're kind of done, but we're
still talking about the
theories
movies.
about the next film. Yeah.
So I say there's...
you've been warned.
There are really only two options, right? The first is to go the line of the comics, and we'll have a big all-out space war where the goal is to separate Thanos from the Infinity Gauntlet and then use the power of the Gauntlet to undo everything. I don't think they'll do that, because that would just feel like this movie again.
Right.
The other theory is they go back in time and change the ending of the original Avengers movie, which is what I think they're going to do.
Oh, like what? Like send the nuke into Thanos' ship or whatever?
If possible. First of all, there was a lot of emphasis on time. Now, partly, I'm going to tell you that this is partly a cheat. I know something about the next Avengers movie.
Oh.
Well, there were some set photos that came out. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that they were...
I don't think that's really ruining anything.
Well,
I think
sure.
everyone knows about that.
I didn't say ruin it. I just said it was a bit of a cheat that I knew it, you know? Because it is a bit of a cheat through a theory if you know it, but these set photos have the characters, the cast of the original Avengers movie in their Avengers 1 costumes back in New York. And there's also like an older Tony Stark. I think that's what they're going to do. That seems to be, and it fits in with Tony Stark saying things like, it's just been this for the last 6 years since New York, you know what I mean?
Will you come over here to the elevator?
Alright. So that's my theory personally. I think they're gonna go, because the thing is, what's important about that is, if they defeat Thanos at that point, that
he doesn't have the stones.
Sure, but what's really important about that is, while that does dramatically change what happens in Infinity War, aside from Guardians of the Galaxy possibly, that doesn't change any other Marvel movie.
Right.
So it's kind of the perfect point to do it, you know? And it also goes some way to explaining why Thanos is not intimately involved in the Age of Ultron stuff as well. Like, they do have that bit at the end, fine, I'll do it myself. As if, like, well, what were you doing? What was your grand plan? Watch while they invent a robot? Because I never quite got that at the end of Age of Ultron, that, fine, I'll do it myself. What was his involvement supposed to be, really? In that...
Well, I think Whedon suggested that there were things that were missing, such as it was Thanos' idea for Ultron to, drop the thing so it'd be easier to get the Mind Stone, because he knew that the Mind Stone was there.
Right. But actually, what we've got left within the movie is Thanos just goes, fine, I'll do it myself. And everyone's like, we didn't even know you were involved.
Right.
But, yeah, like, no... it would change... If you killed Thanos at the end of Avengers 1, it would change Guardians of the Galaxy. A little bit. They'd have to explain how that would happen, because...
Which is why I don't think that's exactly what they're going to do.
No.
I have a different idea.
But I think that's going to be the setup, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I don't think that will be the... I think that's what... Okay. I think that's what Tony Stark is going to want to do at the start of Avengers 4. I think that's going to be his plan. Whether it works out quite like that, I don't know.
Right.
Okay, I need you for a dog.
Yep, I'm on my way.
So you tell me your theory.
I have... so I think there's going to be... I think they're going to go back in time, of course. But I think it might be a case of basically recruiting a second team. I think they're going to, like, basically recruit themselves to take on Thanos.
Joe, when you said that, it immediately came to me. But like, well, okay, not like that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing, but I know exactly what you mean. Like, like the ending of the the Doctor Who 50th anniversary. Like, this time there's three of us. Right, I can get that. I'm with you.
Yeah. But I also have another theory, all right? And this is based solely on kind of insider knowledge. Or not insider knowledge.
Like knowing the comics?
No, like knowing what's been going on with, like, the production.
Oh, right.
Don't. Not now. Both are all... Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Hemsworth have all suggested that they're kind of done.
Yes, I agree.
That they don't want to do this anymore. And not like... And it's not a case of...
No, in quite a reasonable way. They've been...
Right, they've been doing this for a long time.
Right. Right, Robert Downey Jr. has been making these movies for 10 years now.
10 years, yeah. And Chris Hemsworth, not much,
All Chris Evans. They were all in Phase 1. Anyone in Phase 1's been doing this nearly 10 years.
Right.
And they probably all will have been doing it 10 years by the time the fall's out.
Yeah. So they all kind of want out. Which is fine. So what I think what we're eventually going to get is a sort of trade, right? It's going to be... We're going to get a situation where the original Avengers are going to have to trade spots with the ones who disappeared, right?
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense.
Because we have to find a way to bring them back, because there's no way they're letting...
Right, a life for a life.
Black Panther go. They're not letting Spider-Man go, because those movies made a shit ton of money.
Well, and because they need their next set of characters,
Right. But we also need to find a way to get the old ones out without necessarily... And I don't even think they want to kill them. Like, I think they will still...
Long after Marvel has retired the next phase and Spider-Man goes out with them, Sony's going to be like, look, he's 45 now, but it's still Tom Holland in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man.
So I think what we eventually get, though, is for them to swap them out without necessarily having to kill the original Avengers, because that still gives them the option of, hey, remember these guys? When the money...
Right.
When the money runs dry, for RDJ and them, where it's like, hey, want to come back and do a Marvel movie?
Right. But basically putting them in a position where they've been swapped out, they've been, put somewhere else.
Right.
Also gets rid of the thing of like, well, Robert Downey Jr. is not really back for this one, but we've got him back for 30 seconds to be like, oh, we're at the Stark board meeting. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which would always be there as a temptation if you didn't move him on.
Right. And this way, we could still do, like, little cameos, but like, oh, I'm speaking you from beyond the ether. D-Man. Just when they really start scraping for characters,
Right.
But yeah, that's my theory, my prediction.
I think it makes sense.
Is, also, I also think that we get a situation at the end. I think there will be a big conflict with Thanos and whatnot, but I don't see them still winning. What I see happening is... Now, this is just my prediction. My prediction is that Thanos is going to willingly do it. I don't think they beat him into submission.
No, I agree.
To get them.
And I think what's going to come of that... I think part of the reason that will come about is... that is where Thanos went in the comics later on in Infinity War books. All right. And also, it's somewhere to go with it,
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we have time for another mission.
Yeah,
Let's
definitely.
go pretty quick.
Well, let's talk a little bit about... we've talked theories, we've talked the plot. Let's just talk about things we liked and didn't like in the movie,
Sure.
I thought Spider-Man was very strong in this film. I'm a big Spider-Man fan. He's a bigger part than you would have thought from the trailer. Not a bigger part than you could have deduced from the fact that he's Spider-Man and he's a hugely successful character. But he's not in that trailer that much, and he's in this movie a lot. But not in a leadership role, which is right for Spider-Man.
Right. Hello, Concan, welcome.
He gets his really, really, really old movie line again. That's quickly becoming his new catchphrase.
You guys remember that really old movie?
But he's pretty good in this, I thought, as a supporting character. It's very much similar to his characterization in Homecoming. He is not supposed to be there. Tony Stark specifically tries to get rid of him, but he just decides to stick around. And he has the Iron Spider suit most of the movie, which I liked that. I don't like the Iron Spider suit in the comics because I think it looks dumb.
The orange and red doesn't look good, but the blue and red looked really good with the iron trappings.
And also, it has the legs, which we hadn't seen that. I was surprised to see those legs. You know what I mean? But I would have thought, like, I was sure that if he had the legs, we'd have seen it in like toys and things. But I think they kept those pretty quiet. Not that it's like a big deal, but he has them. But he has 4, not 3. Thank you, comics, Tony. Why would Spider-Man have a 3-legged suit? I don't get it. Because if you do 4, you end up very nicely with 8 limbs.
Right.
But if you do 3, you have a man called Spider-Man who has 7 limbs. Which has always annoyed me about the Iron Spider suit. I just... Like, I don't get if the person who designed it didn't know how many legs spiders had, or just didn't think about it, or someone was like, let's not make it too obvious and give Spider-Man 8 legs.
I think it's a case of I almost want to say it's a case of, like, I don't want to draw 4 legs every time.
Yeah.
Shit.
Right.
That's
exactly.
my personal opinion.
But it was nice. It looked good. Here's the thing, right? It's also about how... One of the things I like about Infinity War is it's very good at using its other characters, but using them right. Like, I would never want to see Spider-Man use the Iron Spider suit in a Spider-Man movie.
Right.
But for this film, it's perfect. Because it's a space adventure. And it's Spider-Man in a space... His plot is very specifically a space adventure. So giving him the robot suit is a really good choice, I think. And I liked that they were like, oh yeah, and also Tony should just be trying to get him out of the fight again immediately.
Which makes complete sense, because he has no business being there.
Right, and it's completely in line with their characterization in the previous one. If he'd just let him come along, that would have made all his attitude in the previous one seem a bit strange.
Motherfucker.
So I liked that. I thought Spider-Man was pretty good in it. I do very much like the scene when he's like, Ned, make a distraction, and then Ned just actually freaks out. We're all gonna die!
I really enjoyed I really enjoy the ending in a weird way.
I like seeing a child in a latex suit die.
Well, yeah, but that's not the only thing. I really, because they were pretty good about, like, there weren't a ton of, like, callbacks to the comics, like, direct callbacks, but there were a couple.
We've been locked out. Let's override the security.
And one of them is the ending. The ending to the Infinity Gauntlet story ends very similar. Now, what you get is basically the same thing happens. Like, half the universe killed, blah, blah, but it gets reversed because of Adam Warlock and all this stuff, and which none of them have been introduced yet.
Adam Warlock sort of has.
Yeah, kind of, but
I'm locked
what
out.
I think...
Could you do a security panel? I'm actually locked out at quite an important door.
Yep.
Ride successful. Let's get going.
Cheers.
There, I should have... Yep.
Yep, I'm through.
I think what we're going to see is a replacement of the Adam Warlock character with the Captain Marvel character.
Yep, that makes sense.
But after it's all said and done, the Infinity movie ends with basically they call him Farmer Thanos, and it basically ends with Thanos on a planet, exiled.
It's that ending.
Yeah,
almost.
His armor has been set up.
Oh, we found him.
As a scarecrow.
You gotta shoot this guy and then claim him.
Yep. I should just switch guns. I haven't been using this gun very much. But yeah, Thanos is, exiled. His armor is a scarecrow. He's in rags.
Right,
and he just sits down on the porch of this little shack, and he kind of contemplates like where he went wrong, and the mistakes. And his big mistake was, I was vain. Like, I thought that I could, the power was for me, and which isn't really in line with the characterization of the movie, but it feels very similar, and I like that they chose that callback.
I love
as opposed to one of the other ones that I thought for sure that they were going to do, which is the death of the Avengers. I thought we were going to see that from the comics, which is kind of brutal.
Yeah.
But I thought we would get something like that, where we'd see a very grim departure of the Avengers,
Yeah, and we didn't really.
No, we didn't.
The thing about it is, and it works for this characterization in the movie, but there is no scene where Thanos murders an Avenger.
Right.
There is his,
no.
But he does enact his grand scheme, which is also murdering Avengers.
Yeah.
But in a sort of a roundabout
way. The thing is, like, we only ever see him directly kill two people in the whole film.
Right.
Or three. And each one is in service of getting the stone. He never kills anyone, like, in a fight.
Right.
Like, he kills Loki because he knows Loki has the Tesseract and whatnot. He kills Heimdall because Heimdall just, he's the one who can move these people around and everything like that. He could be a very annoyance for him later on if Heimdall is alive.
Right.
And he kills the Vision because Vision has the stone. But we actually really don't see him actually outright murder anyone else.
Such a good movie.
Oh, it really is.
So I think this is probably the strongest Avengers movie, despite the fact that I would say this is the one, totally fairly. I don't want to sound like the New Yorker here, but this is the one you can least watch as a solo standalone movie. Right. But I do think it works more as a solo standalone movie than it has any right to.
Yeah,
and I would agree. That's mostly carried by the fact that Thanos as a character and Thanos' motivations and quest are well-defined, well-established, and well-written. So if you haven't seen any of the other movies, that in itself carries the film.
Right. And I would add more stuff that I really liked. This one, I think, other than maybe... this one is actually the most visually ambitious of the films. Like, from locales to camera movements to things like that. They go out of their way to make it not look like a basic action film. Like I said before, like I loved the introduction of Steve Rogers, but that is a very cinematic way to do that. It's not just, bah, he jumps in and here I am. They add some flair to it with the train.
Well, it feels like it's benefited from the fact that they've had to think a lot about how to merge a lot of different styles. Like, space in this movie couldn't look like a Guardians movie, right? Because the Guardians 2 looks like a rainbow threw up most of the time. So it couldn't look like that, because not everybody would fit in that. But it still needs to look like you're talking about the same space.
Right, and it couldn't really look like Ragnarok either, because it's not an 80s music video.
Right, and it can't look like Captain America because it's not a war movie. But all those characters need to look like they belong to the same worlds they used to, and this one.
Yeah,
and I think they pulled it off.
And it couldn't look like Black Panther, even though they're in Wakanda, because the African influences aren't on showcase in this movie.
Do you know what I thought you were going to say? It couldn't look like Wakanda because they have a CGI budget this time.
But you know what I mean? Like, even though they're in Wakanda, like, it doesn't look like Black Panther.
Right.
And so on. But like, okay, there's two locales that I thought were actually really, really fascinating. Well, I would say three. I would say that the Forge was really, really interesting.
Yes.
And to give that one fucking idiot some credit, it does kind of look soulish, right?
Right.
Gray, dilapidated. It's a forge with a dwarf and a hammer, and it does kind of have that sort of broken down stone look to it. But then the other two locales I thought were really interesting were where Thanos gets the Soul Stone, that planet. That looks very interesting, and it's very ethereal, right? It's a sort of ethereal that we haven't witnessed in Marvel yet. I can't really think of another place where it kind of just had this, like, clearly made.
Oh, hello to Aspect Bear in the
forces.
chat. I'm sorry, I didn't see you that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that hello before I went too far. I didn't want to think I was ignoring him.
But it was a place that looked like it wasn't made by any of the characters in the film. You know what I mean?
Oh, completely.
Like, it was made by forces beyond.
Yeah.
And then the third one that I loved, and I absolutely love, and I kind of hope we get to see it again, was that weird plane of existence that Thanos goes to right after he performs what he does.
Did that remind you a little bit of the visions in Black Panther?
No, you know what? Honestly, it reminded me a lot of, and this may sound kind of strange. It looked like something that could be in Blade Runner, to me.
Oh, I can see that. Like where the unicorn dashes about.
Right. But yeah, like, it's this orange realm, with this one, like, pagoda in the middle, and and I mean, I think it's clear that he's inside the Soul Stone, right? Because that's why Gamora is there. Because when she died, she probably got sucked into the Soul Stone, and that's what's fueling that stone this time.
Right.
And so I think he's inside the Soul Stone, and that's just what's there. And I think it just looks beautiful, and it's so different than what we've seen. Like, even more so than the other two that I mentioned. That one locale, and we don't spend a lot of time there, but it's like it's one of the few times where I felt like they decided to give the Marvel universe like a depth, because like whereas like the characters and the storylines all have been good and complex enough and have enough depth to entice me, the universe itself has never felt much more than surface level.
I can see that.
And like this suggests like this like whole other realm that just is there. And I liked it. I really, really liked that.
Well, so here's the strange thing, like, and this is something I think the Marvel movies have been really good for, when Fantastic Four tried to introduce Galactus, right?
Mm-hmm.
The world they built up was so wrong for Galactus that in Rise of the Silver Surfer, he had to be a cloud, right?
Right.
Which was terrible.
Right.
And if you told me, say, around about the time the Avengers came out, that one day the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you could put Galactus in and it wouldn't feel ridiculous, I wouldn't have really believed that. But the work they've done in both Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy to build the space side of things has been so good for that, that if you put Galactus in the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I know you won't because it's a Fantastic Four villain and we don't know what's going on with that yet, but if you put Galactus into the next Guardians movie, it's not going to feel ridiculous, right? Even if he's, like, a big guy in a chair. It's not going to be totally unimaginable, right?
Right. I mean, and the thing is like, even Thanos, to me, was not 100% believable, even though we saw him in Avengers. Even at that point, I'm like, oh, they're going to fuck this up, right? That was kind of my first thought. I'm like, really? Thanos? They're going to try to do fucking Thanos? And I just didn't buy it. I was like, no, this is going to be something that they're going to pretend never existed. They're not going to carry on this thread. They're going to realize real quick that it's not a good idea. And it's just going to be something we're going to have to accept that they just forgot.
Right.
But they didn't. They stuck to their guns. They're like, no, we're doing Thanos. Like, and like even by the time like Age of Ultron comes around, and oh, fine, I'll do it myself. I'm even still at that point going,
Right.
But yeah, it was definitely Guardians 1 and 2, and then Thor Ragnarok, where I'm like, no, they can pull this off. Like they can do this.
And they did.
Yeah.
Amazingly. Because I have to say, like,
right.
changing him from the way they had him in Guardians helps. Because I don't think that Thanos would have worked.
Right.
What's your tone, boy? You know?
Boy, yeah.
But
yeah, I'm kind of curious, like at what point did the writer, I can't remember who wrote this either, because I think the Russo brothers did a great job of directing and stuff like that, but I think a lot of credit needs to go to the writer of this film, because so much of it depends on the dialogue and that happens. And I'm kind of curious, at what point does the director go, yeah, what if he's not an asshole? Like, that's the question that writer had to bring up, right? Because I think you put 10 writers in a room, right? And they could be good screenwriters. I think 9 of them go, okay, mad despot, has no respect for anyone, thinks he's better, ego, has an ego about him, and cruel.
yeah, Steppenwolf.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. That's not far off. It's
because Steppenwolf's goal
or Red Skull. Like
Steppenwolf's goal in Justice League is basically the same as Thanos' goal in this. He wants to assemble the amount of things to gain the power of things.
The mother boxes, yeah.
And yet, they feel completely different. Like, I already don't actually remember anything Steppenwolf did with any of his abilities. Like the only thing I remember Steppenwolf doing in that movie is fighting in a sewer for some reason. Like, he'd gone to interrogate people there. But with Thanos,
Right.
I'm going to remember a lot about Thanos well before I get a chance to see this movie again. You know what I mean? I'm still going to be thinking about it.
Absolutely. Right, and the funny thing is, when I think of Thanos and the stuff that stands out to me, it's not the fights.
No.
I don't immediately think of Thanos beating down all the Avengers in that slow-mo montage, right? I don't.
No, in fact, when I think about that scene, what I'm thinking about is Wanda destroying the Mind Stone.
Right.
Like, he's the least important bit of that scene for me, almost. He's just the threat.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I don't even think of him fighting the Hulk. I don't think of him, fight. I don't even think of him in that fight scene with the Guardians, Iron Man and Spider-Man. Like I don't even think of it. I think of 3 scenes when I immediately think of Thanos. I think of him and Gamora at the Soul Stone planet. I think of him and Gamora, or child Gamora, in the weird plane of existence. And then I think of him at the end sitting on the porch.
Right.
Like, those are the 3 things that really stand out for me for Thanos, which really, I think, really says a lot about what they did with that character. It's astounding to me that they gave him that sort of personality, and really, it goes right back to what I said. Like, it took a screenwriter to basically ask one simple question: what if we don't make him an asshole?
Do you know what it reminds me of? What it kind of reminds me of is, because this version of Thanos he is true to the comics in a lot of ways, but it's like, to me, it's a lot like the Chris Nolan version of Bane. So,
Yeah.
if you asked a comic book fan to define Thanos, someone who really has read the comics, right, to talk about Thanos, they're gonna mention Mistress Death, right? Because that's a huge part of that character. For people who don't know, in the Marvel Universe, there is a personification of death, or when you get up to the cosmic scale, and that personification is a woman. She's called Mistress Death. And Thanos basically is in love with her. Oh, Lady Death. Well, I think sometimes... Oh, I don't know. Whatever. But Thanos is basically in love with her. And wants to impress her by destroying half of life in the universe. And she gives him this as a quest, basically, to balance life by doing this.
And still denies him. That's the best part.
Well, when he finally gets all the power in the universe, she basically refuses to speak to him on the grounds that he's now too powerful for her to engage with. Because when he sees her, like, for a long time, he was just carrying around, like, a statue that was her, but he couldn't, like, perceive her reality. You know what I mean? That was an interesting...
Right.
Funnily enough, the Silver Surfer cartoon did a really true version of Thanos, except they made her Lady Chaos, because they didn't want to have a character that worshipped death. But it was still very true to their relationship. But, that was a good show, the Silver Surfer. But what Nolan did with Bane and what they've done with Thanos is very similar, because if you asked a comics fan to define Bane, they would be like, okay, he's got this stuff called Venom, and he's a big, bulky guy who used to live in a prison.
Right.
The Nolan Bane takes away some of the most famous things about Bane, and yet finds a kind of a deeper truth to the character. You know what I mean?
Right.
To bring something to the forefront.
I wish Tom Hardy's voice would have been better for him, but Bane's characterization in that movie is, I think, one of the shining parts of that film.
Absolutely. And I would say they've done something very similar with Thanos here. They cut out the Lady Death stuff, because it is a little bit of a distraction from the story. It's that would be very tough to sell.
Right, but it's something that you can get away in the comics.
Yes.
Right?
But
because, like, the weird thing is that even though we had Ragnarok and we have the Guardians, the Marvel Universe kind of shies away from the goofiest stuff about comics.
Sure. And movies aren't comics.
Right.
And shouldn't like, I hate it when people think that authenticity is always, like, the best thing. Like, I really...
It's not.
Don't give a shit that Sam Raimi made the spider shooters organic. I still think that's actually better than mechanical web shooters.
Right. And the funny thing is, I don't... that's one of the things about the Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe I don't particularly enjoy. It's like, okay... Here's the thing, with this kid, granted, he is smart. He's a smart kid. But no fucking kid pulls this off in his bedroom, when he has, like, an Apple II computer.
Right. Like, the thing that bugs me about it is, I can believe that you could have a kid whose scientific knowledge is so great that he knows how to make a chemical that's like a sticky web. Like, I can believe that. What I can't believe is he's got somehow the machining facilities to make hundreds of these little
cartridges,
well-tooled, precision-tooled little cartridges. Because he's popping those things all the time, right? Like, you never see him put one back in his pocket to refill later, These are disposable items. What is he...
Yeah.
Where's he getting those?
Right.
Does he have a factory in the basement? He's running like a metal lathe all day, like... And he's like, what are you doing down there? Nothing. Like, he couldn't run it all the time to make him either, so it's just running like a factory line, just day in, day out.
But it's stuff like that is kind of weird. But they've managed. But like I said, they managed to avoid some of this really, really silly things about comic books. And I would say, like, Lady Death is a silly thing, and And the difference being is that a comic book, like, even though it takes place technically in the real world, because it's on paper or a screen or whatever, and it's not moving, and it's all drawn, and it's artistic expression, and, like, even the art isn't necessarily realistic.
And you've got the written
a separation.
Word. So you can have a panel next to a shot of Thanos, and it can be written in a different font and be some weird narrator's voice and say, Lady Death. The personification of death and all a cosmic being above. You know what I mean? You could have somebody just say that.
And like, the thing is that I think the medium alone lends itself to having crazier ideas because it's just a disconnect, right?
Right.
Like, whereas movies, because of how they are, especially when you're dealing with live action, actors and not like a cartoon, it makes it a little bit hard to swallow when there's a really silly thing, because your brain is trying to interpret this as a thing that you could see,
There's something else too, which is when you read a comic, you put your own voice onto how things are explained. You know what I mean? So you read the words and you take them in. And it's very easy to... Because comics, I believe that comics are very much read. When people say they're a visual medium, that is true. But even when you're looking at them visually... Even when you're looking at them visually, the narrative unfolds like you're reading a book. Even the visual narrative, it passes item to item.
Yep.
When you unfold something like that, your brain is doing a lot of the work. That's why it's easier to... It's easier to suspend disbelief when you're reading something, I think, because it's not being presented to you. You're drawing the information out of the material. And your brain connects with that very, very differently. The other thing is, in comics, characters like Lady Death, you wouldn't get Lady Death in an issue of Spider-Man. I mean, I'm sure she's appeared once in a while, but you wouldn't just pick open a Spider-Man and get Lady Death in it. Spider-Man, generally speaking, it'll be the same sort of plots you'd get in a Spider-Man movie. The Infinity Gauntlet book is... It is a big crossover event, but it belongs to the same sort of area of cosmic... Right. It belongs to that area of comics. Infinity War, the movie, doesn't belong to that area of movies.
Right. And here's the thing. The original Infinity Gauntlet series is not an Avengers story. They participate, but they're actually quickly dealt with and pushed aside.
Right.
That is absolutely an Adam Warlock story.
Without a doubt.
With the addition of like the Celestials and the Eternals and shit like that. Right?
Absolutely.
It's very much that.
Can I just say, I am so glad, so unbelievably glad they chose... I didn't think I would be. I'm so glad they chose to do the Infinity Gauntlet story and not, like, Secret Wars. The original.
Right.
Because that would be everything everybody feared this movie would be. Because that's what it was in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Secret Wars, it's fun to as a person in the present day now, it's fun to go back and read and be like, all right, what's this all? You know what I mean? But that is actually a really self-indulgent story.
Right.
And Infinity Gauntlet, the comic, isn't.
No.
And neither's this.
Well, and the funny thing is that Infinity Gauntlet is well known and remembered and considered like a classic comic storyline. I think not because of like who's in it, but like what happens, right? Because how do I explain this? It's a well remembered, I think, for Thanos, because of Thanos, and like kind of pushing him to the forefront of the Marvel universe,
And because he wins.
Yeah, and he wins
In that book too.
Yeah, for a bit. Yeah, but if you really break down Infinity Gauntlet, the original comic book story, it's definitely a sum greater than its parts. It's one of those storylines that's almost better to read as a synopsis.
Right.
When you read everything...
Or to get, like, the entire run from Thanos Quest to all the others and read it through as an epic saga like that, not as, like, just a 6-book blob.
Right. Yeah. But, like, when you break it down and look at its parts, if you try to look at every individual issue that made up that storyline, it's silly. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's kind of dumb at times. But when you look at the whole thing as a whole and you see how things go, it becomes a space epic.
Right.
Or just an epic in general.
And also, people like Infinity Gauntlet. Infinity Gauntlet does make a lot of top 10 lists, but when you actually look at what people remember, what most of them are remembering is Infinity War.
Right.
Which is why they rightly called this movie Infinity War. This movie is very much more based on Gauntlet than War, but I'm fairly sure War is going to influence...
War is also a better marketing title,
yes. Oh, for sure. Because nobody knows what the Infinity Gauntlet is yet.
Right.
Oh, do you know, so at the end of this movie, they tease Captain Marvel in the post-credit sequence.
Yeah.
Very subtle, if you're not familiar with Captain Marvel. And by the way, I should say, I'm not very familiar with Captain Marvel, this version. But I was trying to explain to my girlfriend. Basically, I was like, okay, so like this is going to be interesting for me and you because I don't know much about Captain Marvel. She doesn't read comics, so I was trying to say, we're both going to be kind of going in fresh on this character, which is going to be nice when this happens, which is great. But I was trying to explain to her like the whole Captain Marvel situation. I was like, okay, so
I had to do the same thing with my mother.
I was like, so basically, there was a book called Captain Marvel, but it was put out by some
DC.
Was it like Timely Comics made the first one, and then they were sued by DC because DC tried to sue them, saying it was too close to Superman, but they didn't win. But then DC ended up buying the character.
Fine.
And then by that point, Marvel had introduced a character that was also called Captain Marvel. And they sued Marvel, and the outcome of that was that...
Yeah.
Sorry, they sued DC, and the outcome of that was that DC could keep making Captain Marvel comics, but they couldn't call the book Captain Marvel, which is why their Captain Marvel ended up being in a book called Shazam. And is now called Shazam. They just...
Shazam, yeah.
It's so strange.
They finally just gave up the ghost.
It's so weird as well, because, like, this Captain Marvel movie's coming out, and I have to say, like, to me, Captain Marvel... When someone says to me, "Oh look, it's Captain Marvel," my brain still immediately goes, "Oh, what? Billy Bastion? Billy Baston?" And that is the Captain Marvel in my head, right?
Well, and then like when you look at the story of Captain Marvel in just Marvel alone,
right?
It gets even weirder.
It's a long campaign of failed characters in an attempt to keep the book running, so they don't lose the legal right to have the book, and that's it.
And they find that, and the funny thing, they finally found one that worked, but for a long time they didn't want to call her Captain Marvel. They called her Miss Marvel, which was another weird thing, because there was a Miss Marvel in DC.
Funnily enough, though, the Captain Marvel that was there prior to Miss Marvel, there was
Marvel.
Right. The Captain Marvel that was the most successful prior to that was actually his most famous story, and his arch villain...
The death of...
...was Thanos.
Yeah.
And that Captain Marvel, completely different to the Captain Marvel we're getting a movie on, had a very similar setup to the original version of the Mighty Thor, because you remember how Mighty Thor used to be... he was bonded to another character, but only one could be in the same space at the same time. Blake, I think.
What was his name? Donald Masterson?
But yeah, the Doctor.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel, that version, was bonded to, what's his name? Rick Jones, the motorcycle kid from the Hulk, for some reason. And they had that kind of relationship. And then... For some reason, Marvel was kicking off when the phrase graphic novel was coming in. Their first ever graphic novel from that series of Marvel graphic novels. They were just like, what if Captain Marvel very slowly dies of cancer?
Right.
And that was the book. Okay, people want to read that, and Thanos is in that as his honoring him with his coming death.
Right.
And that's kind of a neat version of Thanos, actually.
Yeah. But then it gets even weirder. Where later on Captain Marvel comes back, but he's been existing in, no joke, this is a thing, people. This is a fucking thing in Marvel Comics. He was living in the Cancerverse.
Sinister Magician in the chat says Captain Chemo. Yeah, well, they didn't really do that. It's strange because that book, The Death of Captain Marvel, it's so strange. I think they were obviously trying to go for something beautiful, but it's a very, very, very long comic.
As shit.
it's a very long comic in which Captain Marvel goes to all his friends telling them he's gonna die. That's the book. It's so weird.
I'll tell you. The storyline of the death of Captain Marvel was done far better in All-Star Superman.
Right.
It's almost exactly the same thing.
That's a good
book.
Yeah.
So, there's some weird stuff with Carol Danvers, who is now Captain Marvel.
Well, wasn't Carol Danvers someone before she was Captain Marvel?
Yes, she was Pulsar. No, she was Quasar? I think it was Quasar. And then Quasar became someone else, this other guy, who has another power. And then Marvel transferred his powers to Carol Danvers, and she became Miss Marvel, until finally someone, rightfully so, at Marvel editorial goes, okay, you do realize that she has the same power as Captain Marvel, and she is legitimately an Air Force captain. Maybe we just call her Captain Marvel. Like,
for people who follow the movies, by the way, Captain Marvel was also, it's worth mentioning, a Kree. So he was the same race as Ronan the Destroyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is something that's really dumb about comics, though. For while we're on the subject of things that shouldn't make it to the movies, a superhero called Captain Marvel, whose real name is Marvel.
Yeah. But yeah, so at the end of Infinity War, we get a scene, and they actually do a really cool thing, which I imagine they're going to explain in her movie, but in this short little scene, you actually see why she wasn't around for any of the other events. It's very subtle. It's a very subtle thing, but the little communicator that Nick Fury uses is clearly an old piece of tech, like a 90s sort of like the first instance of what did they used to call those stupid things?
Well, like a beeper, like a PDA.
It's like a really crappy BlackBerry that he uses, right? Okay, new player, cool, whatever, bye. But you see that what he calls her on is on one of these crappy
That's the worst attempt
devices.
to spoil something for somebody. Like, A, it's in a stream marked spoilers. B, it's wrong. And C, it's written in a way that it's just confusing, so you can't actually figure out that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what he was trying to actually say there.
I think he was trying to say everybody in the film dies.
Yeah.
But, we've seen it, so...
Right.
And that doesn't happen, so...
Yeah. But yeah, so what I imagine we're going to get in the Captain Marvel movie is, one, an explanation of why Captain Marvel wasn't around for the previous movies. Because, I mean, they've already revealed that movie is going to be set in the 90s.
Which is an interesting choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly sure, having seen Infinity War now, that the biggest reason for setting it in the 90s is so that they can make this movie without dealing with Infinity War. But that that she can then be in the next one. Which is fine. Mm-hmm. But that's obviously why, But,
I mean, this is also, leads into my theory about what we're going to see in the next Avengers. I think what she goes off to do... Because I spoilers for a movie that hasn't come out yet, I can almost guarantee what's going to happen is they're going to suggest that a bigger evil is coming, and there's something out there that can help turn the tide.
That makes sense.
And she takes off to find it. And when she gets the call from Fury, it's going to be like, okay, now's the time to come back with what I found.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's my guess.
So I think we should probably finish up, but one last thing before we do.
Yeah.
Ant-Man. Now, so I looked up when Ant-Man is set after this, and I thought Ant-Man was set between the two, and I thought it was just going to be that most of the Avengers were going to be off in space or whatever,
Right.
And then I read that it's going to be set before and during, and my immediate gut reaction was it's going to be completely unconnected, and then at the end, Michael Douglas is going to dissolve. Yep. You know what I mean? That's my call.
I think. Well, you know what I would love to see, and this is just me, because I think it's going to play into what my theory of they're going to have to switch spots between the old Avengers and the new Avengers. Is I think Ant-Man is going to be part of the new Avengers.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see, and I kind of hope this happens. Oddly enough, it's kind of bittersweet, but I kind of hope that, Ant-Man and Wasp, save the day in their movie, blah blah, and as they're like, yeah, we did it, they just both dissipate.
Yeah.
No,
but I was thinking,
no ceremony, no nothing, just blah.
There is another possibility for Ant-Man. And I said this while we were on the stream, and the other possibility is he is in some pivotal scene in Infinity War, teeny tiny, we just don't know it yet.
Right.
And they could go either way with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's kind of hard to think of which one he could be in, because there's very little ambiguity in, like, the pivotal scenes.
Yeah, there's not a moment
I can't really think
where if you think...
Where it's like, how did this happen,
Well, not just that, but I mean, like... Okay. Oh, no, what I mean more like this. What if you found out at the end of Ant-Man that he was teeny tiny and on the Infinity Gauntlet when Thanos zapped away, so wherever Thanos is now, he's there? That would change things a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? I mean something more like that.
Okay, I guess. What the fuck is he gonna do? That's the like. Right, but that could be
that could be the opening to like Avengers 4 for him. They were like you see him zap out and he's like, okay, right, let's. Well, shit. There's literally
that gauntlet's destroyed too.
So he just goes teeny tiny and hides out, and then when they get there, he's already there. I don't know.
No, here we go. I got it. Right? So Thanos is off on his his cabin in Montana, which I believe is where he's at. That's my headcanon. He's in a cabin in Montana.
Uh-huh.
He's all sitting there just resting, and you see like the kind of crumpled remains of the gauntlet, with all the stones still there. And then like Ant-Man just pops up, grabs the gauntlet, goes, "Peace out," and he takes off.
Right.
But he becomes a fucking just megalomaniac, and
like
so Thanos has to go off and collect the old Avengers. Like, hey, you know how I killed everyone? This guy's about to do something way worse. Like,
plus he's made the gauntlet really small now, so no one else can wear it. It's really hard to find.
Yeah, it's kind of an annoyance.
Sure, I wonder what Captain Marvel's origin story is going to be in this movie.
Well, I think it's the same. I think, honestly, because the funny thing is, Carol Danvers' storyline and Captain Marvel's like story is actually very similar to Green Lantern's. She's an Air Force pilot, and she comes across this alien with all this power, and he ends up bestowing the power onto her.
So you think they'll just do that, but without Marvel being an established character, basically?
Yeah, I think it'll be a case of she'll be flying a jet or something, or a test flight or something. He shows up, and, she's going to crash, but he saves her, and they stick together for a while, and eventually he's like, okay, well, I'm dying.
And you know what
I'm dying, and I need a replacement. Here, you're it.
You could fit that in really well by doing something like presumably the power's still going to be connected to the Kree. You know what I mean? You could open up with like the Kree Xandar war we know happened.
Yeah.
And have like a spaceship crashing towards Earth, and
Well, because I think the idea was that he wasn't just a normal Kree either. He was like a superhero on that planet. So I don't even think he like all Kree have his powers,
But he's like, the Kree Snarf. He's not like one of the cool ones.
He takes off, he's like, fuck this. He's the worst superhero. He's like, I'm out. You're on your own. What?
Snarf,
yeah,
man.
all right.
Who was Snarf?
Snarf.
Like, here's the thing. He was a Thundercat, right? So
he was a Snarf.
They were the Thundercats. He presumably was a Snarf. But Snarfs... This is what it really irritates me about that. This is something that's really, I think, worth mentioning about Snarf, right? He's sentient. He has opposable thumbs and speech, right? but he's clearly not the same species as the other Thundercats, right?
Right. I like to imagine him as a political prisoner from a past war, held by Prince Lionel, kind of like while negotiations are going on, he's the hostage.
Well, they do make him do all the menial tasks, right? And they treat him like he's inferior, Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is there seems to be some racial animus in the treatment of Snarf by the rest of the Thundercats.
Absolutely.
Just sort of gross.
All right, let's wrap up here. I'm hungry. I want dinner.
Snarf. That's offensive.
Snarf.
That's our word.
No, but I said snarf with a soft A, not the hard A. Oh God. Thank you all for watching. Those aren't biscuits. Panthro's just like, I'm taking it back. Just walking around with a shirt like Randall from Clerks 2, just snarf for life. All right. Thank you all for watching Those Aren't Biscuits. This has been a fun episode where we talked about Infinity War. I'm super excited for what's coming next. And kind of the first time in a while. This movie has cured my fatigue, in a way. And so that's cool. So,
but I'm hoping
yes,
after Avengers 4, I hope it's another 10 years before we get a big crossover with the other characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, before we finish up, all right? I have one question, because I saw this popping around on the internet a little bit. What do you think it's called?
The next movie?
Yeah.
Well, they could get away with Infinity Gauntlet now, although I don't think that would be a very good choice.
No.
They could do it, I suppose. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's called Infinity War Part 2. I think that's a working title.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I've seen some good suggestions.
I think Infinity will probably be in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
actually, I don't.
Ooh, you think it'll be Return of the Avengers? Vengeance.
The Re-Avengers. No, there's actually been some pretty good suggestions.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well,
hit me.
Okay, so one of them is I don't think it's a good suggestion, but I think it's a possible answer. Is Avengers Disassembled.
It just makes me think of, when you go to a fancy restaurant and you order the cheesecake and it comes with like a layer of cheese and then a little circle of strawberries and then your base, just in
it's
triangles.
It's a deconstructed cheesecake. There we go. Deconstructed Avengers. It's just all the Avengers with their parts laying on plates and fancy designs with a swizzle of sauce over it. And a mint leaf for no fucking reason. Just
right. That's what I see.
It's just Thanos and Gordon Ramsay. Like, well, for today I prepared for you Avengers Deconstructed. Oh, yes, I do see that what you're going for, but I don't think you quite pulled it off. Infinity Stone! And just destroys Gordon Ramsay. Just, peace!
Yeah.
Sure, why not? Avengers Deconstructed. Alright, but yeah, that was one of the suggestions I thought would actually work. Another one that like I don't necessarily think any of these are good, but I think they're all very probable. I saw Avengers Endgame.
Well, like
floating around.
Highlander.
Yeah. Oh man, bring Highlander into this. Fuck yeah. Oh, what was the other one I saw? Fuck, I'm forgetting now.
I think Avengers Endgame's terrible.
Oh yeah, so do I. But I think it's probable. I think it's something that is in the realm of possibility.
I guess.
And then another one, in the same lines, because okay, I think they're all probable, but at the same time, I think Marvel has been very good about avoiding some of these cliche titles. But something along the lines of Avengers Annihilation or something like that, I can see happening.
Oh, you can't have an Avengers. You can't have an Avengers movie share a title
with Mortal Kombat.
With Mortal Kombat.
Oh man, yeah, Avengers square off with. It's just Groot. Just I am Groot.
When are we gonna get a mech suit for Groot so he can be Iron Groot?
Iron Groot. Iron Groot. But
right, this needs to happen.
Right.
I did like Thor just calling him Tree. This is my friend, Tree.
Yeah. Oh, I love that bit though. with Captain America. I am Groot. I am Steve Rogers.
I also like.
I fucking love that.
I really like. They're really doubling down on this new characterization of Thor, where he's just like
a nice mumbling idiot,
a nice but oblivious sort of dick. So, like,
right, and I like how he just keeps talking. Like he never stops. He just.
I thoroughly enjoyed when also he
Angel
arrived
Pirate
when he said with Captain America says, "You've had a haircut." He says, "Captain, I see you've copied my beard." It was very much an extension of the Thor Ragnarok. So try strongest Avenger.
Fine. Try Point Break. Accepted. Damn you, Stark.
I watched that movie again recently, and my favorite bit.
It holds up.
It does. My favorite bit is actually when Bruce Banner has to wear Tony's suit because that's the only clothes left in the Quinjet, and it does look like Tony's clothes. Doesn't look like Bruce's clothes at all. Yeah. Like he seems weird. But then because Thor's pretending to be someone else, Bruce is like, I want to pretend to be someone. I'm going to be Tony Stark. He just decides to pretend to be Tony for no reason.
Yeah. It's like, I can see your face. Not if I do this.
That's some weird movies.
Yeah. No, okay. Seriously, what kind of title would you give it? Would you give it a title of an existing story?
Well, I mean, if you look at, for example, the Infinity follow-ups, right? Mm-hmm. You're left with Infinity Crusade, Infinity Gauntlet, which they could do now because they've got the Gauntlet. Crusade has implications that I don't think they want to lean into. Infinity Abyss, I think, and then The End. And I have to say, it would be very bold to call it Avengers The End.
The End? Yeah.
That would be brave, wouldn't it?
You know which one? Actually, I think I got it. And I'm willing...
Is it Avenger Boys Are Coming? And all the theaters like, we can't fit all these do's on the sign outside.
From New York to San Francisco.
Yeah.
No, I think I have it. You know what? I'm actually feeling very confident about this.
Okay.
Because this is a comic series. And I'm thinking
and they like
of...
that. Like, they called the Ultron
Right.
one Age of Ultron, even though it wasn't based on
Right,
Age
and
of
that's
Ultron.
exactly where I'm going with here, all right? I think we get Avengers, the Thanos Imperative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Someone said that someone I saw was betting, and I think this is a dumb idea. Like, I think it'd be fun, but I think it's a dumb idea. That they would call it Avengers House of M and incorporate the end of Thanos into the House of M plot and explain why all the mutants went, and then that's how you bring the X-Men in. And I was like, but no, they wouldn't do that. That would be weird.
Well, that leads to another question. I know we're wrapping up. I do want this a yes or no answer. Do they bring in the mutants in the next one?
I don't know, but I was thinking that if they use whatever method they've used to bring all the people who've been erased back, right?
Yeah.
It would then be a nice window to say, and it turns out a certain percentage of the people who were restored came back with an aberration in their DNA. Mm-hmm. And that aberration appears to be giving them powers.
That kind of sucks. Because that almost ruins the whole point of the X-Men. They were born that way.
That's true.
Right?
But you could bring someone else in like that.
Sure.
How else would you get mutants in? I mean, bear in mind, the whole plot with X-Men is that the mutants have just started happening.
I have a thought. I have a thought process behind that. I've given it some thought. So, I think at the end of 4, right, I think we still lose a bunch of Avengers, and there's no set team around anymore to save the day. And I think what you get is mutants, a certain group of mutants, maybe the X-Men, who have been around the whole time but have lived in secrecy out of fear of persecution, deciding that now is the time they need to come out because the world needs a group to save them.
Or you do it the other way. Same setup to begin with, same thing. They're in hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows about mutants. And then the Avengers are forced to begin investigating an attack by the Brotherhood of Mutants. And that leads to the Avengers, the X-Men, also having to reveal themselves.
Yeah. But that's what I would prefer to see. I would rather see that the mutants were always around, just in hiding for some reason, rather than because of some quirk in the process that they just pop up.
You can incorporate Wanda and Quicksilver, like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, back into that too as well, because you can keep their MCU origin, but then also say that the only reason
it worked because they were mutants.
Right. That's the reason they were the only two that survived. Mm-hmm. It works pretty well. Mm-hmm. It's weird to think about it, like, just before we finish up. X-Men, when you only read X-Men comics, the whole plot about, the world hates them because they're mutants, when you're just watching the X-Men cartoon that just has X-Men in, that actually works. But when you realize that it's also set in a world with, like, Spider-Man and...
Right.
What
I love is everyone's explanation of that is like, well, none of them are born with their powers like the X-Men were.
Well, they don't know.
No one knows that. No one fucking knows that.
Right. Everyone should legitimately think Spider-Man is a mutant.
Right. Daredevil is absolutely like a mutant,
Right.
Like, he has no suit, he has no nothing. He just can apparently see everything even though he's blind.
There's a really weird scene in the X-Men animated series when it's one of the episodes where mutant riots start building up. It always makes me laugh, and it shouldn't because it's supposed to be like a really brutal scene, but these anti-mutant riots are starting up, and they corner this guy, and this guy looks like he's basically human, but he looks like that. He looks like a human version of that guy who sings the song in the special edition of Return of the Jedi. You know that guy? He's got like a beard, he's got big eyes and stuff. And he says, and as they're cornering him, he just goes, he just says, but my mutation doesn't give me any powers. It's just visual. And the boy's like, oh, poor guy. This guy's not a
You
mutant.
got the short end of the stick.
He just has a beard and a funny face. That's not a mutant.
Well, it's funny that's actually been a running thing too in the comics with the Inhumans, with the Tarragon Mist thing. There's a lot of Inhumans that popped up, and people hate them just like they hate mutants. But a lot of them are just like, oh, I'm blue now. I don't have any powers. My skin's blue. Okay, but seriously, we gotta wrap this up.
All right. See you later, dude.
Bye. Yeah, thank you all for watching. You've been watching Those Aren't Biscuits. I've been one of your hosts, Jonathan Cadotte. With me, as always, has been Owen Adams. Owen, where can they find you?
YouTube channel, youtube.com/Owen Adams.
Right. And you can find me on Twitter, which is @JohnCPerson. And all my video content is right here on this channel, Not Biscuits. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a good one.
Bye-bye.